Right. Remember Halo 2? Not the franchise, not the series, that specific game. The one that made 11-year-olds feel like they were watching a war film. The one where people called in sick on a Wednesday in November 2004 just to sit in front of a television all day. That game outsold every film, every album, every entertainment product released that entire year. In a single day. Microsoft owned all of that. The name, the IP, the most valuable shooter franchise ever built. 20 years later, the game they created to carry that legacy has fewer daily players than a local chess tournament. This is not a story about a bad game. This is a story about a corporation that inherited something extraordinary and had a policy running in the background the entire time that made it structurally impossible to protect it. And here is the part Microsoft never explained. They knew. Most people point at 343 Industries, the studio that shipped the broken Master Chief Collection, stripped split screen out of Halo 5, launched Infinite without co-op, without Forge, and then watched 98% of their player base walk away inside 5 months. That blame is not wrong, but it is aimed at the wrong target. The real question is not why 343 kept failing. The real question is why Microsoft built that studio the way they did, and whether any studio on Earth handed those exact conditions could have done anything differently. To get there, you have to go back to the people who actually built Halo, and the specific moment they decided they were done. Bungie made Halo from nothing. The universe, the sandbox, the weight of a warthog cresting a ridge at full speed. Nobody had made a shooter that felt like that on a console before. Combat Evolved changed the answer to that question permanently. Halo 2 in 2004 broke records that had no precedent. $125 million on day one, more than any film that opened that year. The online multiplayer restructured how people spent their evenings, clans, tournaments, week-long grudge matches over a single map. People were not playing Halo 2, they were living inside it. Halo 3 in 2007 did it again. $170 million on launch day, bigger than any film that year. Master Chief had crossed from entertainment into something else. He was a cultural figure that people had genuine emotional investment in, the kind of investment that takes years to build and about 30 seconds to destroy. Then Bungie said they were done. After years of tension around profit sharing and creative control, they negotiated their independence from Microsoft in 2007. The split was professional. They finished Halo Reach as a final handoff, handed over the keys, and left without burning anything down. But here is what that exit actually meant in practice. Bungie took a decade of understanding out the door with them. Every instinct about why the sandbox worked, every conversation about tone that had never needed to be written down because everyone in the room already knew. The stuff that cannot be captured in a lore document or a design brief because it lives in people, not in files. Microsoft kept everything except the one thing that actually mattered, the people who understood it. Microsoft built 343 Industries from scratch in late 2007. A dozen people at the start, named after a character from games they had never made. Bonnie Ross, an Xbox executive whose background was in project management rather than development, was placed in charge. The people who joined were talented. Some of them had grown up playing the games they were now responsible for continuing. But institutional knowledge about a franchise is not something you can hire your way into quickly. Bungie had spent a decade developing the reflexes that made Halo feel like Halo. Those reflexes live in people. They do not survive in handover documents. Halo 4 in 2012 was a reasonable debut. Critics were fair to it, but something was already wrong underneath. Loadouts, kill streaks, mechanics borrowed from Call of Duty grafted onto a game whose entire identity had always been the opposite of Call of Duty. The audience felt it immediately. Many quietly went back to older servers where things still felt right. The studio head who stood on stage and called Halo Infinite the start of the next 10 years of Halo left Microsoft entirely just months after saying it. Hold that thought. In 2014, 343 announced the Master Chief Collection, 6 campaigns, remastered, all in one place. The definitive way to experience everything Bungie had built. On paper, it was the thing that was supposed to prove 343 understood what they were protecting. It launched completely broken. Matchmaking did not work. Players were dropped into wrong lobbies, wrong games, wrong eras. The game that was supposed to say, "We get it," spent months being patched back toward functionality, while the community watched and quietly updated their expectations downward. What most people still do not know is what was already breaking things behind the scenes, because it traces back to a Microsoft policy that had nothing to do with making games and everything to do with cutting costs. Halo 5 in 2015. The marketing campaign was genuinely extraordinary. Months of fake news reports, cryptic transmissions, the suggestion that Master Chief had gone rogue and something had broken in the man who had saved humanity 4 times. People followed it obsessively, built theories, stayed up reading transcripts. The game resolved the entire premise in its opening hour and went somewhere else entirely. The people who had spent months following the campaign felt the switch the moment the credits rolled on the first mission. And there was no split screen. Every Halo game since 2001 had it, the feature that caused a million arguments about who gets the good controller, who has to sit closer to the screen. Gone. No explanation that held up, just quietly removed. By this point, former employees had started talking, and what they described was not a studio making a string of bad creative calls. It was something more specific and considerably more deliberate. Microsoft gave 343 6 years to build Halo Infinite. 6 years. A budget multiple sources described as enormous. The full weight of Xbox marketing. This was the reset. Back to open worlds. Back to what made the original trilogy feel the way it did. The first gameplay reveal in July 2020 was publicly mocked. Flat lighting, washed-out environments, a game that looked years behind where it needed to be. Microsoft delayed it 12 months. When Infinite finally launched in December 2021, the gunplay was genuinely excellent, fluid, fast, the best the shooting had felt since Bungie left. For about 3 weeks, it seemed like the reset had actually worked. Then the season content started arriving late. Then people noticed there was no co-op campaign, no Forge, $20 for a single armor coating. Within 5 months, 98% of the peak player base was gone. After the January 2023 layoffs, former developers went public. What they described was not chaotic or complicated. It was actually very simple. Former developer Briggs Crane said Microsoft's contracting policy was single-handedly one of the biggest issues that Halo faces. The policy was straightforward. Contractors could work at Microsoft for a maximum of 18 months. After that, they rotated out, regardless of what they were building, regardless of what they knew, regardless of whether the project they had spent a year learning how to do properly was anywhere near finished. Can you imagine how difficult it is to do your best work, knowing that they'll get rid of you in 18 months? Crane wrote. All of this just so they can have the luxury of being able to easily lay off employees when it suits Microsoft execs? Former developer Tyler Owens was more direct. Between the contracting policies they abuse for tax incentives and layoffs in the face of gigantic profits, they set Halo up for failure. Microsoft posted $198 billion in revenue the same fiscal year they cut 10,000 people. And here is the part Microsoft never explained. The Slipspace engine, the proprietary technology 343 had been building Halo on for 17 years, was primarily constructed by contractors. When those contractors hit their 18-month limit and rotated out the engineers who understood how the engine actually functioned left with them. Bloomberg reported that by the time Infinite was in full development, very few people inside the studio genuinely understood how their own tools worked. The knowledge had been cycled out on a spreadsheet schedule. Former developer Patrick Wren put it plainly. The reason is incompetent leadership up top during Halo Infinite development, causing massive stress on those working hard to make Halo the best it can be. Leadership had reportedly stopped attending internal testing sessions for the campaign entirely. Internal hackathons that produced workable prototypes were shut down without explanation. In October 2024, Microsoft renamed 343 Industries as Halo Studios. They announced they were abandoning the Slipspace engine and moving to Unreal Engine 5. 17 years of proprietary development written off. Now look across the rest of the Xbox portfolio. Rare built Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong Country, GoldenEye. Microsoft bought them in 2002. They have not released a critically acclaimed game since. The initiative spent years building a Perfect Dark reboot before it was quietly cancelled, and the studio was shut down entirely. Bethesda shipped Starfield. Turn 10 reportedly lost the vast majority of its team in cuts last year. Halo, Rare, Perfect Dark, Forza. Microsoft did not have a gaming strategy. They had an acquisition strategy. Every single one of those studios bought, absorbed, and quietly hollowed out. Those are not the same thing, and the results show exactly why. Bungie spent a decade caring about Halo before they were ever paid to care about it. That kind of understanding cannot be built on an 18-month contract. It cannot be written into a handover document, and it cannot be rehired once it walks out the door. Halo Studios is currently developing new Halo games on Unreal Engine 5. The people still working on it are, by multiple accounts, genuinely talented. They care about this franchise. And maybe the next game is the one. It has happened before with series that seemed finished. But the studio that shipped Halo 2, the team that built the game that outsold every form of entertainment on Earth on a single Tuesday in November 2004, those people have been gone for nearly 20 years. And the corporation that replaced them built a policy specifically designed to make sure that nobody who came after them would ever stay long enough to understand what they had lost.